The morning of May 10th, 1940, began with a strange tremor in the air. Anna Vandermeer stood by her kitchen window, overlooking the narrow canals of Rotterdam, and saw Dutch soldiers running across the bridge, rifles in hand. Rumors of war had hung in the air for months, but now the hollow thud of distant explosions told a different story. Her husband, Peter, adjusted the radio dial, crackling with static until a shaken voice emerged. "German forces have crossed the border." Their son Willem, barely 12, asked, "Papa, will they come here?" Peter hesitated before answering. The world beyond their quiet street had come undone. Church bells tolled not for worship, but for alarm. Somewhere, a column of smoke climbed into the sky. The invasion of the Netherlands had begun, and the Vandermeer family could only watch as history pressed against their front door.
By May 13th, tension coiled through the city like a living thing. Rotterdam's harbor, once full of merchant ships and the chatter of dock workers, now echoed with the drone of engines. Peter walked his family through the maze of narrow streets to a shelter near Witte de Witstraat. "It's just a precaution," he told Anna, though his hands trembled. Overhead, Dutch anti-aircraft guns barked at unseen shadows. That night, the family huddled around a candle, the flickering light carving deep lines of worry across Anna's face. Outside, the River Maas reflected the orange glow of burning oil depots. The Luftwaffe had begun probing raids, testing the city's defenses. Each detonation rolled through the streets like thunder, scattering flocks of terrified birds. The Vandermeer family prayed for morning, unaware that the next dawn would bring the storm that would erase their world.
At noon on May 14, 1940, the sound came first, a deep growing rumble that seemed to rise from the earth itself. Anna looked up from the shelter doorway and saw silver dots swarming across the blue horizon. "Planes," Willem whispered. The sirens wailed an instant later. The German bombers were coming. Their formation hung over the city center like a black cloud. Then the sky opened. Explosions tore through the heart of Rotterdam. The ground convulsed. Buildings along Koolsingel Avenue erupted in fire and dust. Shattered glass rained over tram lines. Anna threw herself over Willem as the shockwave slammed through the shelter entrance. The world turned red-orange, heat and smoke choking the air. "Hold on!" Peter shouted, but his voice was swallowed by the roar of destruction. Within minutes, the proud merchant city was unrecognizable, a furnace of ash and debris.
Hours later, silence fell, an eerie, suffocating quiet broken only by the crackle of flames. Anna regained consciousness beneath twisted timbers. Her ears rang. The shelter had partially collapsed. Beside her, Willem coughed, his face gray with dust but alive. She called for Peter, choking back fear. After moments that felt eternal, a muffled voice answered from beneath rubble. "Here." Together, neighbors clawed through debris. Outside, Rotterdam burned from harbor to cathedral. Entire blocks glowed like smoldering coal. The Lorenskirk's tower loomed against a crimson sky. The bombing had lasted less than 15 minutes, yet nearly the entire city center lay in ruins. Anna led Willem through collapsed streets, searching for open ground. The wind carried the acrid scent of smoke and gas. Everywhere there were survivors moving soundlessly, as if waking from a nightmare too immense to understand.
By evening, the River Maas carried the city's reflection in waves of molten orange. Thousands wandered its banks, disoriented and silent. Anna and Willem found Peter among them, his face streaked with soot, his coat torn. He took them into his arms, but the joy of reunion could not hide the truth. Rotterdam was gone. Nearly 900 civilians were dead. 80,000 had lost their homes. The air still shimmered with rising heat. Somewhere beyond, German liaison officers prepared the terms of Dutch surrender. As the family sat beneath the statue of Erasmus, Anna whispered, "Why our city?" Peter stared across the darkened horizon. "Because we stood on their path," he said quietly. The wind shifted, carrying a breath of burned paper and distant sobs. Rotterdam had become a symbol, its destruction shaking even the world's conscience.
On May 15th, the Netherlands capitulated. The bombing of Rotterdam had forced a heartbreaking decision. In The Hague, Dutch commanders signed the surrender to prevent further annihilation of cities like Utrecht. For Anna's family, the morning brought a fragile, stunned stillness. Soldiers marched through streets lined with rubble, their boots echoing on broken stone. Peter watched as a German officer handed out small leaflets promising order under new administration. Willem clutched Anna's hand, whispering, "Will they rebuild it?" She looked toward the smoking skyline. "We must." Across the river, cranes that once unloaded ships now stood bent and twisted, silhouettes of a fallen dream. The nation mourned quietly, its pride wounded but not extinguished. The ashes of Rotterdam marked not defeat, but the first spark of defiance that would burn through the occupation years ahead.
Weeks passed, and a fragile new rhythm emerged. German flags fluttered on what little remained of the city hall. Food grew scarce, prices doubled, and curfews wrapped evenings in silence. Peter was conscripted to help clear debris near the Erasmus Bridge. Day by day, he saw the city's skeleton exposed, a ghost of Rotterdam beneath layers of dust. Willem collected scraps of metal, dreaming of rebuilding his school someday. Anna turned the cellar into shelter for displaced neighbors, whispering prayers as Gestapo patrols passed by. Though the war seemed distant after the bombing, its shadow pressed close. Every siren made hearts freeze. Every knock on the door could change a life. Yet beneath the fear, a quiet resolve sprouted. Amid the ruins, hope began to flicker, small, defiant, and alive.
By 1942, underground resistance spread through the Netherlands. Peter quietly joined a network smuggling messages through docks disguised as cargo slips. Anna hid documents beneath loaves of bread delivered across the desolate neighborhoods. One evening, a secret meeting took place in their repaired basement. The men whispered under candlelight, planning escapes for Dutch soldiers still in hiding. "We owe it to our dead," Peter said, his voice steady. Each risk came with terror. One informant could doom them all. But courage had replaced despair. The bombing had taught them that destruction could forge unity. Above, the city still stood broken, but life pulsed again between its scars. In that defiance, the Vandermeer family found purpose amid occupation: to survive, to protect, and to remember.
By the spring of 1945, the rumble of distant gunfire signaled change. Rotterdam's remaining citizens sensed liberation approaching as Allied forces advanced through the Netherlands. Anna stood by the river, watching lights across the horizon flash like distant storms. Starving but unbroken, families shared final rations as whispers of freedom spread. German troops, gaunt and weary, began abandoning posts. "Just a little longer," Peter murmured to Willem, now grown beyond his years. In the wind's chill, hope mixed with disbelief. After 5 years in darkness, the dawn of May 5th brought Dutch surrender, signed at Wageningen. Allied aircraft flew overhead, this time bearing relief, not ruin. The sound alone brought tears. Rotterdam had endured unimaginable loss, but its people, scarred and steadfast, had waited for this moment with unyielding faith.
Years later, when silence once again ruled over the Maas, Anna stood where her home once stood. Construction had begun anew. Cranes rose where ashes had lain. The new Rotterdam emerged, a city of glass and steel built from memory and perseverance. Willem, now an engineer, unfolded blueprints beside her. "We're rebuilding it stronger than before," he said. She smiled faintly, hearing echoes of that dreadful day long past.
The bombing had sought to break their spirit, but it had only tempered it. The people of Rotterdam turned tragedy into testament, a vow that no flames would erase their identity. As the ships returned to harbor and laughter filled the streets anew, the river carried reflections of light instead of fire. Anna whispered to the wind, "We survived."